What's up, everybody? Blessed be. My name is Manon, and you are watching Witch in the Working, where we will be discussing all things witchy in and around, throughout and about, above, below, and beyond. Please visit me on my other platforms as well, including Facebook, Instagram, and Patreon, all linked down in the description below. The full script of this video and most of the others is available on my Patreon account for download if desired to build your own Witch in the Working Book of Shadows. Also, many of you asked on the last video where I got my new beanie. And actually, this is just a beanie I've had for a really long time. It was just all black, and I recently got into airbrushing, like painting, and I made it. So that's where I got it from. I pretty much made it myself. So anyway, all right. I'd like to talk about something that has always intrigued me called Appalachian Mountain Magic. Picture the Appalachian Mountains as this immense ancient landscape loaded down with stories and secrets. By all means, this isn't your everyday common run-of-the-mill magic. It's a unique creature that's been part of American tales and spirit for centuries. Now, picture a giant mixing cauldron. Into this cauldron, we're throwing in a multitude of ingredients from all over the globe. First, we've got the Native Americans, the original masters of this land and everything it embraces, who knew and know how to read the earth and sky like an open book. Then we've got peoples from the African continent who brought their own unique and powerful spirits and healing practices, even though they were brought here under the worst of scenarios. And last but not least, the Europeans who journeyed over with their own stories of fairies, spirits, and old world magic. In the end, what we got is this outrageous mix called Appalachian Mountain Magic. It's akin to a recipe passed down through generations, getting tastier and more flavorful with each generation that adds to it. I was a yearly visitor growing up to the Appalachians. For every summer we went to my aunt and uncle's house in the Carolinas, where I received a full experience of this ancient range. And as of now, I currently live just outside, some would say within, this gorgeous and magical wonderland of majestic and flat-out godly forests, rivers, peaks, and valleys. So why are we chatting about this particular subject? Well, I'm going to take you on a small adventure back in time and across the mountains. We'll venture into the history of this special and intriguing magic, see how thousands have been practicing it over the years, and dive into what they believe. It's not just about learning amazing magics and techniques. It's also about acknowledging a portion of American heritage that's as wild and wonderful as the mountains themselves. Let's dive in and get this show on the road. Roll the intro. Welcome back, everybody. So imagine the Appalachian Mountains as an old comfy attic or basement, exploding with treasures, knickknacks, and heirlooms from multiple different families. This place has been a home to peoples from all over the globe, each contributing their own special gift of traditions and beliefs. So where and what are the Appalachian Mountains? The Appalachian Mountains, often simply called the Appalachians, are a vast mountain range in eastern North America, stretching roughly 1,500 miles from Newfoundland and Labrador in Canada down to central Alabama in the United States. The Appalachians are divided into three main sections: the northern, central, and southern Appalachians. Each region has its own unique geographical and ecological characteristics. The range includes the Great Smoky Mountains, known for their misty appearance and rich biodiversity, and the Blue Ridge Mountains, famous for their bluish color when seen from a distance. Geologically, the Appalachians are among the oldest mountains in the world, formed over 480 million years ago. Their once towering peaks have been eroded over time, giving them a more rounded appearance today compared to the jagged peaks of younger mountain ranges, for instance like the Rocky Mountains. When folks first made homes in these mountains, they didn't just bring their furniture and clothes. They dragged along their ways of celebrating and knowing the world, like old recipes for a fulfilled life passed down from their grandparents generation to generation. These recipes showed them how to heal with herbs, tell tales to explain the mysteries of life, and rituals to commune with the earth, the skies, and all of its inhabitants. Living in the Appalachians was like living on a big, secluded island in the sky. The mountains were so immense and wild that they were like huge walls, separating the settlers away from the rest of civilization. This made the Appalachian folks stick close and embrace their old ways even more, because they weren't being encouraged to change by new fads from the city folks. But here's the amazing part. It wasn't just about grasping into their own unique traditions. These mountain communities were like a giant cauldron of stone soup where everyone shared a unique piece of their own spiritual home cooking. The Native Americans, who mastered the land better than most, shared their extreme respect and love for nature in the tales that acknowledged the rivers, rocks, and trees. The African peoples brought with them powerful healing knowledge and an amazingly powerful spirit that wouldn't break, no matter how tough life grew. And the Europeans threw in their own flavor with stories of the fae, spirits, and methods to protect the home from invisible troubles and nuisances. All of these different ingredients blended and melded together over the years, developing a kind of spiritual stone soup that was and is unique to the Appalachians. It wasn't always sun and rainbows, and the soup many times bubbled over, so to speak. However, in the end, it created something special that couldn't be found anywhere else. This mixture of beliefs and practices is what makes Appalachian Mountain Magic so thick and fascinating. It's living evidence of how people can come together from different cultures and create something fascinating, even in the most complicated of places. Okay, let's break down the big ideas around Appalachian Mountain Magic in a simplified but intriguing manner. Imagine you're walking amongst a gorgeous wild forest in the Appalachian Mountains. Every tree, rock, and stream you see is part of an enormous living story. This story is at the heart of Appalachian Magic, and it's all about being connected to everything that surrounds you. Let me be very clear. People who practice this kind of magic believe that nature isn't just something pretty to look at and visit from time to time. It's like a best friend or family member. They feel that everything in nature, from the highest mountain to the tiniest insect, has its own spirit and special energy. It's as if the entirety of the world is alive and buzzing with magic. So when these people need guidance or some magical aid, they don't just run to the bookshelf or the internet. They also listen closely to what the land and its creatures have to say. They could be hunting for the right herb for a healing, acknowledging when to plant crops, or by studying the moon cycle, or even forecasting the coming days from the wind and the weather. In Appalachian Magic, there's a sizable spotlight on being in tune and at one with the seasons and cycles of the earth. It's all about understanding that birth, life, death, and rebirth are all natural parts of existence. This equates to appreciating the land, taking care of it, and not exuberantly removing more than you need. After all, if you look after nature, nature will look after you. Another foundational idea is that everyone has a piece of this magic as a part of them, particularly when it comes to healing and protecting their loved ones. It's understood that with the correct knowledge and a loving heart, anyone can embrace the natural magic around them to make life better and more wholesome. So in a nutshell, Appalachian Mountain Magic is about living and cooperating hand in hand with Mother Nature, embracing her rhythms and utilizing that knowledge to deliver a bit of magic into everyday life. It's a hint that we're all part of something much bigger, and that there's mystery and wisdom to be gained all around us if we just know where to look. This is nothing new to most of us. For many of us, being witches, shamans, druids, and what have you, we know and practice only too well the many things being discussed here. I mean, so far, everything I've said, most of us practice. So I really feel like this is I think it's neat that I feel like a lot of our things that we do are all tied together, and it kind of gives, if anything, it gives us confirmation of the things that we do. And I guess now is as good a time as any to show you a book, Mountain Magic by Dane McCoy, that is actually a pretty good book. I've had this book for years and years and years. I don't even know when I got it, but I can tell by the pages, it's definitely, I've had it for probably better of 20 years. But I think it's a pretty good book that will go over some of these things. So that's something I recommend if you want to get a little bit more into mountain magic. You know, grab this book. A lot of the things I'm discussing in this video are actually in this book as well. So, you know. What if you were visiting your grandmother and found out she has more than just cookies and stories? She's also got a special kind of magic that she keeps mysteriously surrounding her and uses it from time to time to fix things. That's the idea behind Granny Witchcraft, or Granny Magic, a snuggly but impressive piece in the world of Appalachian Mountain Magic. This isn't about creepy spells or flying on broomsticks throughout the night skies. It's about the wisdom and healing that one receives from the heart of the home, usually emitted by the elder women in the family. These grannies are like the community's back pocket doctors, but instead prescribing out chemically filled medications. They usually use herbs, homemade remedies, and a good dose of wisdom to help people in their healings. Got a cold? there's a tea for that. Feeling blue? A granny might have just the right words and warm hug to lift your spirits. Granny magic isn't just about healing what ails us. It's also about comforting the soul and keeping the family and community strong and willful. These wise women are like wise old oracles of folklore, tales, and traditions, passing down lessons taught to them from their grandmothers and great-grandmothers before them. They tell us all about respect and caring for the land, the importance and relevance of family, and how to listen to the quiet, subtle whispers of nature. In many ways, grannies are the unsung heroes of Appalachian Magick. They are evidence that you don't need fancy tools or complicated and extreme rituals to make a difference. Sometimes all it takes is a listening ear, a loving heart, and the courage to stand up and be mindful for what's right. Through their straightforward everyday magic, they point out to us that the most energetic of spells are often those that come from caring for others and honoring the wisdom of the past. In the center of Appalachian practices, there's an exceptional kind of healer known as the witch doctor or yarb doctor. But let's not allow the name witch doctor to throw you off. There's nothing ominous about them. They're more like the friendly neighborhood herbalist using nature's pantry of goods to grind up remedies and medicines that help keep everyone healthy and strong. These yarb doctors are like walking, talking field guides who know all the plants and herbs you can find in the Appalachian forest. Yarb is just an old-timey word that means herb, and these amazing folks know all about them. They can clue you in on which plant might soothe a sore throat, which leaves can help fix a cut, and even which berries might give you a swift kick in the ass if you're feeling run down and tired. What's really interesting about yarb doctors is that their knowledge most likely isn't something they learned from books or Google. In actuality, it's been passed down from generation to generation, often from one family member to another. They learn by doing, picking herbs, making remedies, and discovering what works. It's all about understanding the land and listening to what it has to say. But yarb doctors do much more than just conjure up herbal remedies and fix-it-alls. They're also there to lend an ear and offer advice to others who need it. They have a knowing that healing isn't just about fixing a physical ailment. It's also about taking care of the whole person, inside and out, emotionally and physically. That's why their approach to healing carries a good dose of kindness and understanding, making them trusted and much loved figures in their communities. In a world where we often rush to the pharmacy for a quick fix, the tradition of the yarb doctor shows us of a slower, more natural and holistic approach to wellness. It's proof of the power of the natural world and the foundational connection between people and the land and Appalachian cultures. In the world of Appalachian Mountain Magic, one of the most interesting parts is how folks use what's growing in their own backyard to make life a little better and easier. This is where herbology and wildcrafting come into the mix. It's all about knowing your local flora, not just what's good in a salad, but what can help heal a cut, soothe a cough, or even keep bad vibes at bay. For a practitioner of mountain magic, taking a walk through the woods isn't just about seeing a bunch of plants. To them, they see a medicine chest, a spice rack, and a bunch of protective charms all rolled into one. That's how someone skilled in Appalachian herbology sees the world. They know that a certain flower can assist in healing a wound, that a particular leaf can soothe a stomachache, and that certain roots can help keep your home feeling happy and safe. Wildcrafting is just, again, another fancy word for going out and gathering these plants and herbs from the wild. But it's not about just whimsically taking whatever you find. It's all about respecting nature, asking permission, and only taking what you need. It's like being a good neighbor. You wouldn't just barge into someone's garden and take all their tomatoes, right? Same goes for wildcrafting. It's about being in tune with nature, understanding the give and take, and always saying thank you. This connection to the land isn't just practical, it's spiritual too. By working with the plants, people are also connecting with the earth and the energy around them. It's a way to stay grounded, feel a part of something bigger, and tap into the natural magic that's all around. So whether it's making a healing salve from yarrow, brewing a calming tea from chamomile, or hanging dried herbs above the door for protection, these practices are a big part of what makes Appalachian Mountain Magic so unique and interesting. It reminds us that sometimes the simplest things can be the most magical, and that nature's always there to lend a hand, heal a hurt, or just make the day a little brighter and more peaceful. In the world of Appalachian Mountain Magic, folks have some pretty unique ways of taking a peek into the future or rectifying answers to life's tricky questions. This is called divination. As many of you know, it's like having a special conversation with the universe to get some inside info and tips. Let's take a look at a few of these techniques that are as fascinating as they are useful. First up, many mountain magic practitioners simply strolling through the woods pick up on messages and signs from nature. Instead of just seeing trees and birds, they're reading their specialized messages, signs, and omens. It could be as simple as noticing which way the birds are flying or how the leaves are rustling in the wind. People who are good at this believe that nature has its own way of talking to us, giving us heads up or advice, just like a friend or advisor might do. I had a friend growing up whose mother was very good at this. She taught me that when the cows lay down, it's probably going to rain. And let's not forget the old term, red sky in the morning, sailor take warning, and red sky at night, sailor's delight. Then there's dowsing, which might remind many of us of treasure hunting, but with a twist. Dowsers use a special instrument like a forked stick or pendulum, and they utilize it to help them find things hidden from clear view. This could be anything from underground water to lost or stolen items. The tool moves or twitches in response to questions or when it's over the right spot or pointing the right direction. It's like playing hot and cold, but with a magical helper. For more on dowsing rods, see my video up here and also link down in the description below. Another interesting method of mountain magic divination is using sacred texts for guidance, like the Bible or another important book. This isn't just about reading a passage for comfort and inspiration. It's more like asking a question, then flipping the book open to a random page and seeing what message pops out. Bibliomancy, to be exact. The method behind this madness is that there's a bit of divine intervention guiding you to just the right words you need to hear at the moment to assist you in your issues. All of these techniques share a common piece, the belief and understanding that there's more to the world than meets the eye, and that with a little bit of know-how and intuition, we can harvest that deeper wisdom and better ourselves and help others. Whether it be listening to the whispers of the earth, letting a dowsing rod lead the way, or finding guidance in sacred words, divination in Appalachian Mountain Magic is all about finding your way by tuning into the bigger picture of the universe. Folk healing in mountain magic is like having a grandma who knows just the right home remedy for everything, mixed with a little bit of that warm, comforting feeling you get when someone takes care of you. This down-to-earth approach to healing is all about using simple, natural methods to fix both body and spiritual boo-boos. Let's start with prayers and/or incantations. In folk healing, words have power, especially when they're part of a prayer or incantation. It's like sending out a special request to the universe or a higher power, asking for a little help in the healing department. People might say these words while they're mixing up an herbal remedy, or even while they're just sitting with someone who's not feeling well, conjuring up and infusing some good energies to help them with their recovery. Next, let's talk about laying on of hands. This isn't about fancy massage techniques or anything like that. It's more about the belief that we can transfer healing energy to another person just by touching them. Reiki is a good example of this practice that many of you are familiar with, though let me be very clear that I'm sure a lot of people probably and practitioners of Appalachian Magic probably don't practice Reiki specifically, or maybe even know what it is. Imagine a mom kissing a scraped knee to make it better. That's the kind of vibe we're talking about. It's the warmth, care, and intention behind the touch that's believed to do the trick. So when I was younger, I guess between the ages of like 7 and 12, I used to have warts, like a lot of warts. I had warts on my elbows, my hand, my knees. They were just like all over me. Like, I'm not talking about like, 10 or 2. I'm talking about literally like probably like between 50 to 75 warts. Like, and I used to get picked on relentlessly. Like, I remember growing up, all the kids would call me Wart Man and stuff like that. It was horrible. So I guess I was about 12 years old and I was playing football outside, and I broke my finger, my pinky finger. This one literally fractured it. It was facing like off to the side like that, and very painful. I went to the hospital and they had to set it, multiple times, which I don't know if you know what that means, but they literally pull your finger, they pull it out and they push it back in put the bone back in place, and it was a horrible experience, nonetheless. Anyhow, it was, I was just about healed with that, and I went for my last checkup where they had to do x-rays like every like couple of weeks to make sure it was healing correctly. So I went there, and it was my last one, and I went up and I looked at the x-ray, and I saw it was, and I thought it was broken again. I thought it was re-broken. I was like, started crying and everything, and the doctor comes in and he's like, "What's the matter? Why are you crying?" And I'm like, "Because I think you're gonna have to reset my finger again." And I was just a kid, it was not a fun ordeal. And he said, "Well, where did you get your, MD at?" And I'm like, "Well, and he goes, "No, your finger's fine." He goes, "As a matter of fact, you're healed. You're good to go." And he's sitting there, he's comforting me, and my mom's sitting there, and he looks at me and he says, when did you have these warts?" And I'm like, well, I've had him for a few years now, for some years now. And he starts rubbing the warts. Like, this is I don't know, I guess he was like in his 30s, this guy, and he's talking to me. And he's talking to me and my mom, and he's rubbing all my warts. He goes to my hand, he's rubbing the warts. He goes to my elbow, he's rubbing on the warts. He goes to my knee, he's rubbing on the warts. And he's talking about him, and I'm talking about how the kids pick on me and all this other stuff. And, I guess this went on for about, 3 or 4 minutes. And he said, well, he goes, usually, he goes, I don't think these warts are going to be here. He goes, give it a couple of months. He goes, and these warts are going to go away. And I was like, yeah, right. Like, that's sure. Okay, sure. Lo and behold, I shit you not, within 3 months, my warts just went away. They just literally dissolved. Like, they just went away. And I've always heard about wart rubbing and stuff like that from peoples and shit like that, but I just never really, now anytime I hear about it, I didn't even relate it till much later on. I was probably in my 20s before I looked back and related it all together and said, oh my gosh, this guy literally, I believe, worked a magic on me. And I just think it's a great story because it really does show I'm a believer, totally a believer of things like that at this point because it physically happened to me. So anyway. Lastly, let's talk about talismans and charms. These are special little items that are thought to carry protective or healing powers. It could be a stone, a piece of jewelry, or even a specifically crafted bundle of herbs. These items are like personal bodyguards, warding off bad stuff and keeping the good stuff close. People might carry them around in their pocket, wear them, or place them in their homes to keep the health and happiness levels at a high. In the world of Appalachian folk healing, it's all about getting back to the basics and using what's around you. Not just the herbs and things, but also the love, care, and positive intentions that come from the community around them. It's this blend of practical know-how and heartfelt connection that makes folk healing such a special part of Appalachian tradition. When it comes to keeping bad energies at bay in mountain magic, people have some pretty clever tricks up their sleeves. This is all about protection magic, which is like setting up a security system around you, but instead of cameras and alarms, you're using things like iron, salt, and special symbols. First off, let's talk about iron. In the days of old, people believed that iron was super tough, not just because it's a strong metal, but because it could also keep away unwanted spirits or negative energy. I'm sure many of you heard about the fairy stories and everything where they use iron to ward off the fairies, which at some point in time were considered negative. So that was the whole concept there. Much of this also came about because it was steel that won wars and disputes. That's why you might see horseshoes hanging above doorways in some homes. It's not just for good luck, it's like saying, hey, keep out to anything you don't want coming in or you're gonna get it. Salt is another big player in the protection game. It's not just for seasoning your dinner. Salt is like the Swiss Army knife of magical tools. Sprinkling salt around your house at doors and windows is like drawing a line in the sand that bad energies just can't cross. It's a simple but powerful way to keep your space clean and clear if you're ever feeling magically threatened. Now on to protective symbols. These can be all sorts of things, from special drawings to certain patterns or even words. The idea is that these symbols act like shields, bouncing back anything icky that tries to come your way. People might paint them on their homes, carry them around, or even wear them. It's a bit like wearing a supernatural badge that's meant to keep you safe. Many of you are familiar with the pentagram, probably one of the most famous protective symbols that exist. So whether it's a chunk of iron, a sprinkle of salt, or a special symbol, the idea behind protection magic is all about creating a safe space where only good things are welcome. It's a mix of tradition, belief, and the power of simple everyday items to create a sense of security and peace. In today's fast-paced world, you might think old traditions like Appalachian Mountain Magic would fade away, but guess what? They're making a pretty big comeback. People are discovering these old ways and finding that they're just as relevant now as they were back throughout the last few centuries. So how are folks keeping the magic alive, and why is it catching on again? First off, there's a real hunger out there for getting back to the basics and connecting with nature. With all the technology and screens we're surrounded by, it's refreshing to step outside, take a deep breath, and feel the earth under our feet. That's where Appalachian Magic comes in. It's all about that deep personal connection with the natural world. Many magical people are starting to see the value in knowing how to read the signs in the leaves and the stars, just like their ancestors did. Then there's the whole DIY, do-it-yourself and sustainability movement. More and more folks are wanting to know where their stuff comes from, whether it's their food, their clothes, or their medicine. Mountain magic, with its focus on using what's around you, fits right into this. People are getting into foraging, growing their own herbs, and making their own remedies, just like the granny witches and yarb doctors of old that we discussed earlier on. But it's not just about practical stuff. There's also a spiritual side to it, in a world that can feel pretty disconnected and lonely sometimes, especially since the pandemic. The traditions and practices of mountain magic are one example of a practice that offers a sense of belonging and connection to something bigger. It's a way to tap into a lineage of knowledge and wisdom that's been passed down through generations, giving people a sense of foundation and purpose. Of course, with the internet and social media, these traditions are spreading way beyond the Appalachian Mountains. Folks from all over are sharing their experiences, swapping stories, and keeping the traditions alive in new and creative ways. It's like a big online potluck where everyone brings a dish from their own corner of the world. However, of course, with this popularity comes a bit of a challenge. It's important to understand that these practices are more than just trendy hobbies. They're a part of a rich cultural heritage. So as the people dive into mountain magic, there's a big encouragement to do it respectfully, taking the time to learn about the history and the communities behind the traditions. I think one of the biggest differences between like modern day pagan practices and witchcraft practices and whatnot is that a lot of people tend to make these practices weekend Wiccans, I like to call them, or weekend witches, where they really don't work magic on a daily basis. They kind of do stuff as it comes up and what they need and when they need it, and that can be like that's a big difference. Where with this style of magic, in the mountain magic, and for anybody who's practicing it now, it would have to be like a daily thing. It's like it was in their everyday life. Everything they did, from waking up in the morning to going to sleep at night, was filled with magic on daily. It was just part of life. That can be very difficult to attain nowadays, with everything we have going around, cell phones and technology and all that stuff. It can be hard to keep life in that magical balance as a daily thing. In the end, the resurgence of mountain magic is about more than just looking back. It's about bringing forward a way of life that's in tune with nature, grounded in community and rich with wisdom. It's about finding magic in the everyday and realizing that sometimes the old ways might just be what we need to navigate the modern world. As Appalachian mountain magic gets more popular, it's also facing some bumps in the road. Think of it like a secret family recipe that suddenly becomes a hit in restaurants everywhere. Sure, it's cool that more people get to try it, but sometimes the original flavor gets lost in the mix. This is what's happening with Appalachian spiritual practices, and it's stirring up some challenges and controversies. One big issue is commercialization. Imagine you've got these deeply personal and traditional practices that have been passed down for generations, and suddenly they're being sold as the latest trend. You can find books, courses, and even authentic talismans or herbal mixes online. But when these sacred practices are turned into products, it can feel like they're losing their soul, so to speak. It's like the difference between a mass-produced pie and one made by your grandma. The ingredients might be the same, but the love and intention behind it just isn't there. Then there's the problem of misrepresentation. With all the buzz about Appalachian magic, some folks might get the wrong idea about what it's all about. Instead of understanding the deep connection to nature, the community, and the heritage, people might see it as just a quirky, mystical practice from the mountains. This can lead to stereotypes that don't do justice to the richness and depth of the real traditions. Another issue is cultural appropriation. This is a tricky one because it's about finding the line between appreciating and sharing culture and taking it without understanding or respecting where it comes from. When people from outside the Appalachian community adopt these practices without a real grasp of the history, the struggles, and the culture behind them, it can feel like a piece of the community's heart's being taken away without permission. So what do we need to do about these problems? It's all about balance and respect. It's great that more people are interested in these traditional practices, but it's important to approach them with a genuine desire to learn and honor the history and people behind them. This means taking the time to understand where these practices come from, listening to the voices of those who've lived them, and remembering that it's not just a trend, but a way of life that deserves respect. In the end, the conversation about commercialization and misrepresentation isn't just about keeping traditions pure or gatekeeping who gets to practice what. It's about making sure that these beautiful, fulfilling traditions find new life in the modern world, that they keep their heart and soul intact. It's about ensuring that the story of Appalachian mountain magic is told with honesty, respect, and love, keeping the original flavor of that secret family recipe as delicious as ever. In today's world, where everything is fast-paced and constantly changing, folks who practice Appalachian Mountain Magic are finding creative ways to keep their traditions alive whilst also making them fit into modern life. It's a bit like updating your grandma's classic recipe for today's kitchen, keeping the heart and soul of the dish, but maybe using a food processor instead of a hand grinder. Let's take a look at how modern practitioners are blending the old with the new in a respectful and meaningful way. There's a big emphasis on learning and respecting the roots. People are diving deep into the history and stories behind the practices, making sure they understand where they come from and what they mean. It's like sitting down with your elders and really listening to their stories, soaking up their wisdom. This respect for the past is the foundation of everything else, ensuring that the essence of the tradition stays intact. Then there's the use of technology. Nowadays you can find online communities, blogs, and even apps dedicated to Appalachian spirituality and practices. These digital tools make it easier for people to share knowledge, learn from each other, and keep the conversation going no matter where they are. It's like having a big virtual family reunion where everyone's swapping recipes and tips. Another way modern practitioners are adapting is by integrating these old practices with their everyday lives. They're finding that the principles of Appalachian Magic, like being in tune with nature, using what's around you, and caring for your community, fit really well with modern movements like sustainability, mindfulness, and localism. It's about making these ancient practices relevant to today's challenges and values. But it's not just about fitting in with the modern world. It's also about making space for personal interpretation and creativity. Today's practitioners are putting their own spin on traditional rituals and remedies, customizing them to suit their personal beliefs and lifestyles. It's like taking the classic family recipe and adding your own twist, making it uniquely yours while still honoring where it came from. Lastly, there's a strong focus on education and sharing knowledge respectfully. Modern practitioners are not just learning for themselves, they're also teaching others, spreading awareness about the tradition's depth and richness. They're careful to do this in a way that respects the origins and the communities that have kept these traditions alive for generations. Honoring Appalachian Mountain Magic in the modern spiritual landscape is all about balancing reverence for the past with the realities of the present. It's about being deeply rooted in tradition while also being open to change and growth. By doing this, modern practitioners are ensuring that these ancient practices continue to thrive and inspire, bridging the gap between the old ways and the new world. We've gone over how Appalachian Magic is a vibrant quilt stitched together from many different cultures, Native American, African, and European, each adding their own patterns and colors. We've journeyed through the forest of herbology and wildcrafting, where every plant tells a story and holds a secret remedy. We've dipped our toes into the streams of divination, where the natural world whispers secrets about the future and guides us on our path into the mysteries. We've sat by the fireside of folk healing, feeling the warmth of community care and a gentle touch of healing hands. We've drawn protective circles with salt and iron, crafting talismans that guard our homes and hearts. And through it all, we've seen how these ancient practices are finding new life in our modern world, adapting and growing without losing their essence and importance. As we've walked this path, we've also seen the challenges. We've talked about the importance of not just grabbing these traditions like souvenirs, but approaching them with the respect and honoring they deserve. It's very important to remember that these practices aren't just quaint little relics to be discarded. They're living, breathing aspects of Appalachian culture, teeming with history and meaning. In other words, if you get into working this type of magic, you should go into it wholeheartedly, not just grab little pieces here and there and, make the best of it. Remember, the magic of the Appalachians isn't locked away in the mountains. It's woven into the stories we share, the traditions we honor, and the connections we make. So let's keep the conversation going, exploring this amazing heritage with open hearts and minds. Well, it's going to wrap up this episode of Witching and Working. If you encountered Appalachian mountain magic in your own life, do you feel a pull towards learning more about these practices? Let's all know down in the comments below. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up and please subscribe if you haven't already. And don't forget to ring that little bell to be reminded of the wonderful and exciting future episodes to come. I love you guys and gals. Blessed be.